Good evening. It's Monday, May 27th, 2024. Welcome to episode 64 of Porterhouse and Teal Live. Joining me tonight is Patrick Roehrman, who is a professional knife maker who made the decision a number of years ago to switch from working for the man to working for himself as an entrepreneur at MT Knives. So welcome, Patrick. How are you, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Patrick and I first met about a month ago now, I guess, down in Tennessee. And we were both at the Living Free in Tennessee workshop. And actually, the first time I heard of you, that wasn't the first time that I came to know of you. I used to listen to a backpacking channel called Homemade Wanderlust. My wife and I were avid backpackers, and we started watching a young lady named Jessica Mills, who we binge watched all of her content, and she actually had one of your neck knives around her neck during her hiking exploits. And so that's where I came to actually learn of MT Knives and learn of you. But it was super cool to actually run into you down there. I didn't even know you were going to be there.
Yeah. Old Jessica Dixie.
Yeah.
I met her at another event, right after she had hiked the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And, it was we became friends, and I was like, you need a good knife if you're going to be on the trail. So I hooked her up with a knife and told her, I said, you just keep doing what you're doing, and this will be your full-time job. And sure enough, that's all she does now. And I'm still rooting for her to reach that 1 million milestone. I think, I think it's definitely an achievable goal, and I think she'll get there one day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she's one of the OGs kind of in the backpacking world. I mean, there's a lot of them, but as far as from the standpoint of YouTube content, she was somebody who kind of ascended right about when YouTube was becoming a thing and people were making content on backpacking videos. And so I binge watched a lot of her content in preparation for our hike on the PCT. And it was it's pretty cool finally getting a chance to meet you. But let me ask you, man, because you've made the switch from being somebody who had a full-time job, presumably with a pension and all those sort of benefits that come along with it. What was the decision, or why did you decide to actually go another way?
Well, ultimately, I had always had a drive to be self-employed. This wasn't my first self-employment adventure. And I started out years ago doing handyman work and just doing different things, had different ideas and tried them, but nothing really, nothing too big.
Mm-hmm.
And before I was ever a lineman, I welded, I worked on grain elevators. I'd done so many different things. The lineman job was like one of my first long-term employments. And when I say long-term, a lot of times I've worked someplace for 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, and then I'd go do something different. But when I got into line work, for one, I was looking for something as a welder where I was at with really no kind of qualifications other than experience. There wasn't, you'd quit, you'd start another job, you'd start at the bottom. I mean, it really didn't matter how good of a welder you were. Where I was at, you were going to start at the bottom, work your way up. And I kind of got the job to have, and it wasn't all that great. And so I was like, you know what? I need to change this. I need to have a profession, a career that no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I'm going to make a decent living. And, you know, a lot of times people complain about, well, I don't make enough money, or, you know, but they don't stop and say, hey, who is making money? Who's making good money? And what does it take to get that job? And so thankfully I had a friend that was a lineman. He's like, you ought to go to line school. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I've got a kid, you know? And so I ended up going to line school like 3 or 4 years later with 2 or 3 kids. And, you know, when it was a lot harder. And then I was the old guy at school, you know, and I'm going to school with a bunch of 21-year-old kids, and some of them weren't even 21. I think but anyways, the thing about your journeyman lineman, you know, once you have a ticket and you get through your apprenticeship, you're a journeyman lineman. No matter where you go, they're in demand. No matter where you go, you're going to start out at journeyman lineman wage. And when I found that out, I was like, you know, that's what I need. I need something that no matter what, it's in demand and it's paid, you know, good pay. So, and it was right up my alley. You know, I wasn't afraid of heights, wasn't afraid of electricity. Don't mind working outdoors. I was already working outdoors and all the weather and stuff. So it was a perfect fit. And so I put in to go to school, got in, did the training. And, you know, I forgot the, giving you that whole rundown. I forgot the original question.
No, I was just asking why did you decide to make the leap from basically a pretty solid job to saying, hey, now I want to go a different direction and become an entrepreneur and work for myself? What was the catalyst that really sent you over the top?
Well, and so I didn't have where I was at. I didn't really have a good. I was kind of my lead man and I did not get along, and it was a pretty rough several years, but I stuck it out, you know, because it's one of those things that you just stick it out, you work through your problems. But there's just some people you're never going to get along with real well. And honestly, he was just about to retirement age, but I was coming up on 7 years of employment, fixing to have 3 weeks paid vacation, the holidays, the whole 9 yards. But yet I had this desire to want to work for myself, to be at home with my kids. And I guess I just kind of knew, like, excuse me, I was getting older, and I just kind of knew, like, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And so I was like, I made the decision. This is what I want to do. I had worked with another podcaster, Jack Spirko, the Survival Podcast. I'd made him a knife, and I had enough orders for the business that I wasn't going to get anybody's work done for, you know, a year with my job, you know, because you know how it is. We're on call. You know, you get out to the shop, you start doing some work. Next thing you know, I'm getting called and I got to shut everything down and go take care of business, you know? So I had enough work as a side job that I was backed up. But yet if you quit your job and you're just doing that full time, you know, I had a few months worth of work. Right. So I needed something a little more guarantee. And so me and Jack and I, he had kind of had this idea. I'm like, how do I go from a part-time knife maker to a full-time, you know? And so we put together it's called the stakeholder program. And we sold 100 positions. And the crazy thing is, I had kind of told my work, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And my boss was just kind of like, I don't remember exactly the details, but basically I put in my 2 weeks notice before I knew how everything was going to unfold, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was pretty stressful, you know, in my mind. Like, I had some faith that it was going to go well, but that, you know, also I was like, what happens if I sell like 10 positions? Or because I sold the positions for $550. And the day of the launch, they crashed my website, And so I ended up sending out links through my email, and they sold out in like 6-7 minutes. It was like
all of the 100 stakeholder positions.
all of them.
Okay, so tell me what is entailed, or what is you get as a stakeholder?
So the stakeholders got their first knife, which was called the Alpha, and they got a certificate with it, and that knife was actually their position. So with that position comes first right of refusal to any limited edition knives, contact with me. And basically, you know, what happens a lot of times in the knife industry, and a lot of industries actually, is, you know, at the beginning, somebody starting out, they're selling their knives cheap, whatever their work is cheap, and, you know, you can get them. And then as their business grows and more people find out about them, it gets to the point where you just can't get a knife. You know, even, you know, there's a lot of people I'd like to make knives for, but I'm one man. There's only so many knives I can make in a year. And so I have to decide, you get to the point where you have to turn down work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my stakeholders have the first right of refusal. Anytime I do a limited run, that I go to the stakeholder, it's numbered with their number, and I say, hey, this is what I'm making. If you want it, you can buy it. If you don't want it, I can sell it for you. And then I have a stakeholder price that's below retail. And then if they don't want to buy it, which doesn't happen too often, then I sell it and I send them their cut. Right.
Okay.
So it's a little ROI for them, helping me do what I want to do. And then it's also, you know, just a way they can secure a knife when I produce them. And then too, they have priority too. Like if somebody reached out to me and says, hey, I want a custom knife or whatever, then I'll try to fit it in. But if I've got stakeholders who want something custom, they're going to be first, you know?
Right. Yeah. So there's 100 positions. If somebody decides they don't want to be a stakeholder, what happens there?
So back to where I said that first knife is their position. They contact me. They say, hey, you know, I think, you know, whatever reason I need to sell, I want to sell, whatever. I say, okay, well, you can put that together on eBay, or you can put the listing and I'll put it out, or I can list it for a fee and I'll put it out. Either way, I'll put it out to my newsletter, to people who are interested, and then help them facilitate selling their position, which I think it's happened 2, maybe 3 times.
That's you've only had 2 or 3 people that have decided to opt, to sell their position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. The first one went for, I think, like $2,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's proven to be pretty successful. That's a pretty good idea. Jack is somebody who has inspired a lot of people. He's there's a lot of tentacles that have spawned off of the Survival podcast and what, he's been able to kind of produce from his show. And so I suppose you're kind of another success story in that. I didn't realize that's how you got your start, was through Jack. That's pretty cool.
Yep. That's so I was listening to Jack's show back in the early days, and he had this knife sponsor. It was Knife Kits, and he talked about wanting a mammoth tusk knife. And so I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I'd like to make you a knife. And I ended up making him a mammoth tusk knife, which, looking back on, I probably shouldn't have been working with mammoth tusk at my skill level, but it's a knife that he still has today. And it's cool. It's a
right
$300 piece of mammoth ivory. Crazy.
Wow. So how many years have you been making knives? When did you start this professionally, as far as full time?
I think almost full time. I think it's been about 10 years, a little over 10 years.
Right.
I think I started making knives around 15 years ago.
Who have you made knives for? You know, from the standpoint of people that would be somebody that people would recognize by name.
Oh, you want me to name drop?
Yeah, why not?
uh, this guy by the name of Mike Rowe, Dirty
Oh,
Jobs.
yeah.
Yeah. I did he's got a knife that I used to carry, knife I made for myself, you know. I reached out to him, and he's just as down to earth, real as you'd expect. And, you know, anyways, I ended up sending him, I wanted to make him a knife, but I knew, like, realistically, I wouldn't be able to get one done anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up just sending him my personal knife, which was it was a Japanese laminated steel, with some carbon fiber and mother of pearl handle. It was a really nice knife. Like, it was what I wanted, you know. And but I ended up sending that to him, and I sent him another one of my Ranger knives that was I think I might have sent him a limited edition one that sold for like $2,500.
Right.
And then I sent him a couple knives to auction off for his Micro Works Foundation. And so there's him and Dixie, Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
Jack, Where's My Knives?
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, Live in Free Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. Wrangler Star.
Mm. Yeah.
Got a video over on Wrangler Star. I sent him a really nice knife.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've lost track of
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man.
Some
So
names that people might recognize.
yeah, for sure. I recognize a few of those myself. You know, the Genesis neck knife is one that you know, seems to be a very popular knife, the neck knife that you know, a lot of people have. And what are some of the other knives that you make, though, aside from that Genesis neck knife? You know, what type of functions do they perform? Are they bushcraft? Are they survival knives? Are they, you know, hunting knives? What kind of other knives do you make?
The sky is really the limit. I can pretty well make just about anything. Um, I've made like belt knives, hunting knives, neck knives, kitchen knives. I haven't done any folders yet, but I have some designs that I plan on doing in the future. Um, with my with my stakeholders, originally I had thought that I'd produce a lot more knives. I was hoping to maybe produce 2 or 3, 4 knives a year, you know.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like a lot of things, you know, when you're getting started, you don't realize the work that's involved in some of your dreams or your aspirations, and then life hits you in the face.
Yeah.
So, you know, I did that stakeholder launch, and I thought, man, I'll knock these out in 3 or 4 months and get on to the next one. And it ended up taking me almost an entire year just to complete those 100 knives. And part of it is I'm my own worst enemy. I have a very high level of expectation, and it's, you know, I struggle with something being perfect, you know, like I want perfection, but I know that it's not something that you can do in scale. You know, it's something that I can't remember the quote, but, you know, perfection's the enemy of something. But, you know, when you make something, you see all the flaws, you see all
Mhm.
the imperfections, and it's kind of a curse because um, there's always that voice in the back of your head that it's not good enough. And, you know, people, when they buy a custom, it's funny because I think in some ways, as a customer, when you spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on something, you're like, you have a certain expectation of what you should receive.
Sure.
And a lot of times when you get into handmade stuff, um, like you're fortunate to be able to get somebody's work of art, like that sounds whatever, but you want somebody that's going to appreciate the work and the heart, the what you put into it. And honestly, like it's not a real lucrative business. Like custom knives is not where it's at. As far as like I know there's some people that probably make a decent amount, but then like what are they putting out? I look at some other stuff and I'm just like, man, I can't believe that they sold that. I've got a $1,200 knife from a maker that will remain nameless, that I was really excited to get some of his work. And when I got it, I was like, really? Like 5 more minutes and this could have been a lot better. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know where that, and when I did the math, like $1,200 is really about what a custom knife should cost. Like bare bones. Like that's how much work I have in a knife,
Right.
So when I sell a knife for $600, $800, like I could go work at Walmart and make more money.
Right. Well, let me just say this, that the majority of people that might want a knife aren't going to spend $1,200 on a knife. Those are generally the people who are really into knives, knife nerds that are into knowing all the different types of steels and all of those sort of things. What about the average person what would you recommend is a good knife that is going to be serviceable to open up Amazon boxes, but also be able to maybe skin a rabbit or to cut a steak? What knife would you recommend that might fit into the budget of somebody that's just your average person? I would say probably that's going to be 90+% of the population with regard to knives. Well,
and that's why I have the Genesis knife.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the everyday carry. It's quality steel. I hand sharpen every one of them. It's going to have all the performance that a custom knife would have at a fraction of the cost. Mm-hmm. And, do you need, $175 knife? No, you can go out and buy a, $50 knife or $10 knife, but I think, there's enough people that go to the ball game and they go spend that much money on their food and drinks. Pricing is probably the hardest thing that any business owner does, because you want to have a fair price, but you also need to stay in business. And so it's just difficult to, you want to be fair, mm-hmm. but you also need to make a living. So that's where, and why I'm really passionate about teaching people how to sharpen knives is because it doesn't matter if you have a $2,000 knife or you got a $5 knife, all of them are going to get dull. And if you know how to sharpen a knife, then you know what you need to know to always have a sharp knife. Right before we got on here, I was out sharpening my knife.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Patrick. Is, I mean, you can spend a bunch of money on something and that might be completely appropriate, but it really comes down to what are you going to be using that tool for, and how does it really fit into your budget, but also knowing how to service that piece of equipment that you do have and getting the best out of it, I think is an important point that you just brought up. And I think another good point that you brought up is that people have no problem dropping that kind of money for going to a ball game or doing something to go out to dinner or whatnot, but that's now gone. But a knife that you might spend $175 or $200 on is something that you're going to have that's going to be able to be, in hand and a piece of a kit that you'll be able to carry with you,
I was just talking with one of my stakeholders earlier today on the phone, and he's like, he said, he bought an Outdoor Edge, I think is the company, but one of those knives has got the replaceable blades,
Yeah.
and it's like it, I understand, like I get it. I don't know what those $2 a blade or $1 a blade, or I don't know what they cost, but for somebody that can't sharpen or doesn't want to sharpen, you just put a new blade on there, and but we're a throwaway society. But the real value in learning a skill is no matter what, you'll always have that skill. And I think people don't take into consideration, like, sure, that's $1 or $2 or whatever that blade cost. But what are you going to do when you can't get them anymore? Or, if we get into a place where, remember like COVID, you just couldn't find stuff. Sometimes if you got to run all the way to town and you live way out in the sticks, like the knowledge of sharpening is just so valuable. I use it, I sharpen my saws, my drill bits, my knives. The fundamentals you learn are applicable in so many different situations. And it's a skill. It's a skill that you have. It makes you a more resourceful person. And, I watch your videos and I see what you do, and it's right up your alley, being resourceful. Like, sure, you could go to town and you could buy some gadget that's going to solve your problem. But I love the, some of your creative ways to do things. Like, I think that's a lost art skill,
Yeah. Yeah. It's something I actually kind of pride myself on is, doing without. And for many years I did without, where I would do things without having the right tools. And that was something that I got and I learned from my dad, because he didn't always have the best tools and the right tools for the job. And, you kind of have to outsmart the thing that you're trying to do. And like I say, I've always kind of, looked forward to that challenge, I suppose. And it's kind of a real game changer when you actually go out and spend some money and get yourself some cordless tools, or you get yourself a piece of equipment or something like that, because it's pretty nice having that. But you're right. It's definitely a lost art, and people need to be able to do without sometimes. And that's the only way you learn those skills. And sharpening knives, I think, is probably one of those things that kind of is a lost art for a lot of people.
Well, what I find is when people are disconnected from the work that's involved, the work that's actually happening, when we take a circular saw or a sawzall or hydraulic log splitter, right, and we're doing this work, we don't care when the tool gets dull. We don't care, but when you're doing that by hand, when you're splitting wood, when you're cutting a board with a handsaw and your saw gets dull, you feel it, And so having that knowledge and the understanding of the difference between sharp and dull is just going to save so much work, because, like I run chainsaws. People run chainsaws all the time dull. It stretches out the blade. It causes more wear and tear on the bar, on the sprockets. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. That's the quote I was looking for.
Yep.
But there's just so much wasted energy and time because we're disconnected from the labor itself.
Sure.
So just being more efficient.
Sure. Hey, I wanted to switch gears on you a little bit here and talk a little bit about family. And
Okay.
You and your wife have 10 children, from what I understand.
Yes, sir.
Which I absolutely think is awesome. And I wanted to get your perspective on the following, because Rebecca and I have spoken on this pretty recently, and I've spoken to some family members on it pretty recently. And, there's a lot of studies and statistics out there citing the declining birth rates among various generations. And, I wanted to get your thoughts because you're somebody who's absolutely contributing greatly to reversing that trend.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, the population replacement rate, which is also the fertility rate that is needed to maintain the population, is 2.1 for every woman. So currently, as it stands now, or as of like 2018, the millennial women were only just above that at 2.02 children that they're having. And Gen X is 2.07. Boomers are 2.05. And, I think that's a huge shift from how it has been historically. It was not uncommon back in the day to have families that were 8, 10, 12 in number, but over time that has decreased. And, I wanted to get your thoughts maybe on what you think the reason for that decrease in birth rate is.
Oh, that's a deep subject. A lot of it's going to come to worldview,
Mm-hmm.
just propaganda. My own grandmother believed that we were like running out of room, and she was in the middle of DC and hadn't really been outside of the city. And, like I can understand if you're in the middle of a metropolis like that, thinking we're out of room, and you just see the negative side of humanity, just the trash and the, whatever. It'd be easy to believe that, hey, we need to stop having kids. We need population control. We need to downsize. And then you come out to the Ozarks or Kansas and some of the, there's so much uninhabited land that I think most people couldn't fathom how much land there really is. But then too, like what is your view? What is your view of children, and what is your goals in life? What is your retirement plan? What's your legacy? What are you leaving the world? I have kind of a biblical worldview that I believe that children are a blessing from the Lord. And I think the world looks at children as a curse, like they require so much, and they, take from what you can do. Ultimately, having children is a sacrifice. It takes money to raise them. It takes resources, but in the end, in the long term, I think it should be where we take care of our family. We take care, you raise your children, and there's going to be a day when you're going to need them to take care of you. Like, you see the atrocities that happen in these nursing homes, long-term care. And I know there's good places, but there's a lot of bad things that happen. I went seen, my grandmother was in a nursing home, and I remember in high school going and visiting her, and there's a lady at the door every day. Every day I'd walk in there, hey, you, hey, and just these people that just wanted connection. They wanted to talk to somebody, and it's sad, I would, try to talk to people, but at the same time too, like, I don't know. So for me, I believe that children are a blessing. I definitely didn't plan on having as many children as we have. Not that my wife wanted a large family. I'm thankful that we have a large family. I also don't think it's for everybody. There's people. I don't think, I do what I feel like I'm called to do. And I don't think that my path is the same as everybody else's path. Unfortunately, there's plenty of people that would love to have a family that can't. And there's
Hmm.
people that probably shouldn't have children that do, you know.
Hmm.
But so it's just what I do. It's what we do.
Right. Yeah. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that once they go through life and they're going to look back upon maybe some of their decisions to maybe not have children, or maybe they wish that maybe they'd had a few more or whatever. Um, I don't know. I just find that people who don't have children eventually wind up later in life becoming very lonely, and not having people around them, because that is the hub of everything, is your family. Those are the people that are going to actually be there for you when you need people there. It's great to have friends, it's great to have acquaintances, it's great to have all of those things and build those types of relationships, but the bottom line is, there's nothing a more better bond than a strong family. And I don't know. I find it interesting because my dad came from a family of 13. My wife's dad was from a family of 10. She came from a fairly large family. My family wasn't large, but by today's standards, it would be large, because people aren't having more than about 2 kids. And I think one of the reasons why that is because people in today's society tend to be a lot more inwardly focused. They're looking at themselves, and maybe thinking that kids, as you kind of pointed out, are somewhat of an inconvenience or a burden, because it does change your life. It does change the things that you're going to be involved in. But when you have that inward focus about, oh, I want to do all these things and whatever. Oh, I guess we'll have a couple kids. Oh, that's a lot of work. That's it changes things, and so you either embrace that change and you go with it, or as most people, in some of the generations now, I think they're looking at it like, well, I've got enough. That's plenty. But it didn't used to be that way. And I think there's a lot of other extenuating circumstances. Back in the day, they didn't have things called Planned Parenthood, right?
Mm.
Parenthood wasn't planned. It just kind of happened, right?
Yeah.
And so now you've got, birth control and all of these types of things that are going to be impacting that fertility rate. And so, there's a lot of different reasons why that might be occurring, environmental factors, nutrition, all of those influences, abortion, all of those things are dramatically impacting, I think.
And I
you know,
believe like this was the propaganda that was fed to our grandparents and our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents. Like a lot of kids' decisions come straight from their parents. Like a lot of these people who waited till they were 40 to have their kids, or parent are things that parents have put on their children. It's like, you got to go to school, you got to go to college, you got to have a house, you got to have all this stuff before you have a child. And you know i I feel like we started out poor. We started out with debt, unfortunately. And just we struggled, and a lot
mhm.
of that struggle drew us closer together. And um there's different ways to go, but I don't know. It's like, um I think a lot of this has been what we've been fed. Parents, expect children to do. I've seen it, and it's like I influence my children, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, I do it with hopefully the best interest in mind. Um, but yeah, kind of like we were talking to, our children are not only a blessing, but they're our strength. And I'm fixing to be 45, um, which is still young, but I I try to stay active and stay strong. But I know, like, I don't heal as fast as I used to. I've been injured, and
Mhm.
my son now is 15, and man, I love it. I've got some daughters in their 20s, My son's 15, and the amount of help that they like at some point, it's just like, man, I'm so glad I have a son that I can say, hey, can you help me haul this? Can you help me do this? And, um, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. I think the being so career focused, back in the day, there wasn't really this influence of having a two, income household where both parents worked outside of the home. That's kind of a newer thing. And I believe I talked about this in our last live stream. It's people are being more career oriented and they're putting off having children later in life, which again may be affecting fertility rates and all of those types of influences. But kudos to you, man, for having a large family. I think that's actually for the average person. And as you pointed out, some people aren't really cut out to be parents, and if they choose not to be, that's fine. But I think for the average person, that's going to be your greatest legacy, is raising the next generation and doing so responsibly. So kudos to you and your wife.
well, and one other thing too is, like having children and raising children is a very eye-opening thing. I'm sure, you've seen with your own children, like sometimes when you see that reflection in the mirror, you're like, man, that doesn't look so good. You know, um, children kind of amplify our good and our bad. And, it really helps you mature and grow up and realize, hey, like I have these faults and I'm teaching them to my children.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so it helps you. It's, I think it's a good part of life to experience. And I don't know if you can hear that, but I got a helicopter or something flying over.
I can hear it. It's no big deal. It's not that loud.
They're on
Yeah.
me.
What's some of the biggest challenges that you guys face as having such a large family?
um, I would just like, it hasn't been easy. Unity, like just trying to keep that family unity, dealing with all the, there's always, I think people see it and they're like, man, your children are so well behaved and you know this or that. And it's like, but it doesn't come without a cost. It doesn't come without a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always, it's nurturing. Like, it's just like having a garden or whatever, you get what you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work, especially this time of year when everything's popping up and you're putting out fires and just dealing with everyday life,
Right. Your wife homeschools, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. Um,
I homeschool too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys grow a lot of your own food?
We don't as much as we should.
Yeah.
We've been in really like transition for the last 4 years. We had, so when I was a lineman, money was good and life was good. And I supported the family and the farm and all that. And when I went out on my own in the knife business, um, I wasn't making a lot of money. And things started having to go, like we had a dairy cow, we had goats, we had, we had all these animals to take care of. And the first year or two was extremely rough. And so slowly our savings dwindled, the livestock kind of dwindled, and we ended up having to sell the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up having to go back to work here. About 3 years ago, I went back to line work for a little while. Um, I think that people don't see that, they see a successful business and they think, oh, it must be nice. He's making all this money. But if my goal was just to make money, I would have stuck with the working for the power company,
Yeah.
I've been blessed. I've been really fortunate. We just bought some property last year. and we're building it up, and we got livestock again. But yeah, it's been a journey.
Oh, I can only imagine, man. I mean, you've got your own lacrosse team, dude. You know,
Yeah.
a lacrosse team is like 10 players, 5 on either side. And,
Yeah.
that's a lot of human beings. So, yeah, again, kudos to you and your wife for doing the thing. Cause I really do think that it's a pretty important thing.
Somewhere I have a picture. I took a picture of my car. It was like, I don't remember what car it was, like
Here, keep talking 1 second.
Yeah. Somewhere I got a picture of this car. It was like a Topaz or some car, and it was a junky car, and I was putting gas in it, and I had enough gas to get down to Jack's to an event, and I took a picture because this was one of those times where like I had enough money to get to Jack's, but I did not have enough money to get back. And I thought, someday when I've made it, somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, he must be nice," and I wanted to document that. Like, are you willing to drive 8 hours away to go to an event with not enough money to get home and take the chance to, run a business? I think a lot of people, they're not willing to take those risks. They're not willing to live without. They want that new car, and they want all their technology and their comforts. And, I think a lot of times you can't get to where you want to go without making sacrifices. So
Sure. How long you guys been in the Midwest?
I wasn't born in Kansas, but I was, my dad was in the military. So, we ended up in Kansas. And I was basically raised in Kansas. And then when I became a journeyman lineman, my wife was raised in Kansas, born and raised in Kansas as well. We liked Missouri, and we thought, we'd like to move to Missouri, move to the Ozarks. And it took however many years, and we're finally in the Ozarks. When I first moved to Missouri, we were just barely into Missouri, and not the pretty part of Missouri. It was just kind of flat lands, kind of like Kansas. But so we've been here now. I don't know. My son was born here 15, 8. I don't know how many years we've been here, 16, 17 years.
What do you like about it?
I like the water. I like the trees, the hills. Growing up in Kansas, flat, dry. Missouri's got lots of creeks and streams, and I haven't done a whole lot of traveling. I'm sure there's other beautiful places to live, but this is where we're at. I'm pretty happy.
Right on. I saw the other day, man. I think it was yesterday. Saw your Instagram where you're out chasing tornadoes. What's going on there?
Yeah.
You had an actual tornado you were chasing.
Yeah, no, I was not chasing it. I was trying to stay out of its path.
Really?
I had went to there's another YouTube channel, Prepared Homestead. He's here in Missouri. They were doing an event. I went over to it, and as I was coming home, that tornado was passing through, and there's people pulled over, and I was like, I parked at one time, and I was like, I can't tell if it's coming this way or not. Like, and it's like, kind of, do you just keep on driving, or are you going to drive into it, or, what do you do?
Yeah.
So
often you do that sort of thing. Not too often, I imagine, huh?
Not too often. I grew up in Kansas. Tornadoes were like, we had a tornado come a half mile from our house when we were a kid. Thankfully, I've never had a house struck by a tornado or been close enough to really have any bad damage done. But I, man, there was a night in Kansas where tornadoes were going all around, and it was pitch black, scary. Because what's worse than seeing a tornado
Mm,
is not seeing a tornado and knowing that it's there. You know, like
mm,
it was dark, it was hailing, it was raining, and I was in my car, and it's like, you know, do you just drive into the ditch and wait for it to blow over? And every now and then lightning would strike and you'd see a shadow of what you thought was a tornado, and you're like,
mm.
what do you do?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
That,
then
that would be pretty unnerving. I could imagine, man.
yeah. I
Yeah.
had a friend ask me the other day, he's like, hey, do linemen go out and work when there's tornadoes and stuff? And I'm like, if the power's out, then the answer is yes. You know,
Mhm,
we're
mhm.
out there when tornadoes are flying and when the snow's, the ice is hail and wind. And, you know, if
Yeah.
people's power is out, we're trying to get it restored and, you know, you stay safe as possible. But what do you do?
Yeah. 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 Hey, one of the things I thought was pretty cool, man, when I was down there in Tennessee with you is when I asked you if you wanted to go for a run and you said yes.
Well,
That 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 was pretty cool, you know. So Patrick and I shared a few miles when we were down there, and I know that you've got some fitness goals that you've stated.
oh, yeah.
Um, how what are those fitness goals as far as running wise?
You know, maybe put it out there.
Well, you never know. You might feel pressured to do something about it.
Yeah. So, um, well, I always hated running. I was one of those guys is like, yeah, if I'm running, it's because I'm being chased, you know.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, I kind of started running. Thankfully, one of my stakeholders is a border patrol agent, and he, you know, I met him, and he was telling me about all the crazy running he does, and I was like, you know, I think I might get into that. So I bought a Garmin watch and started walking. I started out walking, and then it got to where I felt like jogging, and um, I worked my way up to do a marathon distance.
Mhm.
Completed my first marathon, not an official race, but just on my own, and it took me just under 6 hours to do.
Mhm.
You know, it's no joke. It's kind of funny. You know, like you don't really have an appreciation for something until you've actually done it. And it's funny, you know, you're working your training and you get up to running 12, 14, 16 miles and you think, I could run 2 more miles. And then training day comes where you got to run 2 more miles and you're just like, those last 2 miles are killing you. You're
Yeah.
like, how is it that I can run, you know, 18 miles, but to run two more just feels like I'm dying, you know?
It's humbling. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely humbling.
And so,
It's yeah, so I appreciated you going out and doing that run with me. And fitness is one of those things that for me, it's a part of my preps. It's something that is not often talked about in the prepper community. More than likely because it's something that people have told themselves, I don't like doing this because it's hard. But anything worthwhile is takes effort, and there's nothing more worthwhile than your health. And you don't have to be a runner to take interest in your health. You can go out and you can walk, you can do yoga, you can ride your bike, you can do all kinds of things that are going to contribute to that. Um, but I always take a shine when I can find somebody else who has an interest in those sort of things. So again, I appreciated, us being able to share a few miles when we were down there. That was cool.
well, I appreciate you taking it easy on me because, you know, like, uh, I was, you know, a lot of times I go to these events and I'm kind of like you, like, I don't know who all's going to be there. And like, and I've been to some events where I missed some really great opportunities to have some really good, meaningful conversation with some really incredible people.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm not going to do that this time. You know, I'm going to look at the speakers. I'm going to know who's there. And, you know, so before the event, I checked out your YouTube channel and I found out that you were an ultra marathoner. And I'm like, you know what? like, that's cool, because a lot of what inspired me to start running was a ultra marathoner by the name of Chad Wright, who's got the 3 of 7 project. And he's an ex-Navy SEAL. And listening to him talk about running and training and what they go through SEAL selection, like, what I like about running the most is it's a mental game. And, you know, discipline, like, mentally, the decisions we make and who we become ultimately come from our thoughts and our ability to, to win that mental game. A lot of times we stop running, not because we can't run anymore. We stop running because we just decided, hey, you know what? I'm done with this. And so I wanted to have that discipline, that mental fortitude to bring my body into subjection to my goals,
Yeah. It's something that people that haven't experienced it, can't appreciate, but it's that's what I like about the 100-mile distance, because you get the opportunity to have so many different highs and lows all encapsulated into one event, where you'll be at the highest of high and then you'll hit the lowest of low. And if you're willing to stay in that valley and work yourself through it and figure out a way to bring yourself out of that, you can feel amazing in a very short period of time. It's just really interesting how a lot of it is a mental challenge, and that's what I like about it as well,
So have you been hypothermic before?
Not to the point where it's causing me, where it's life threatening, but I've been cold,
Right.
Not in a race.
Okay.
Well, I should say that, yes, I have been, but I was in a position where I could get out of that. And,
because I've heard some stories of some runners, and Jesse Itzler, I don't know if you know who he is, but he did some training with, I think, Goggins and some different, but anyways, I think on one of his races, he got hypothermia, and they worked through that. And it's just like, it's just crazy what some people go through. And like,
Sure.
I guess this is kind of my, one of my things is we've been taught so many lies and we believe them. We were doing research because we have a lot of copperheads right now, right? So I was doing some research about copperheads, and you know what? Black widows, copperheads, rattlesnakes, they're all going to kill you, right? I forget how many thousands of copperhead bites happen every year, and it's not typically fatal. But we're taught as kids, right? Like, you get bit by a copperhead, rattlesnake, black widow, you're dead, right? And a friend of mine suffered a heart attack while they were over in Ecuador, and she lived through it. Like, so many of the things that we believe or we think are false. Like, can a copperhead kill you? Sure. Can a rattlesnake kill you? Black widow? Can a heart attack kill you? Sure. But that's not necessarily the outcome. And being a lineman, being a firefighter, being, a soldier, you're going to see some stuff. You're going to live through some stuff. And probably one of the most valuable things I learned being a lineman was how to keep your head about you when things are burning down around you, right? And how to be smart and to stay alive. And a lot of that is, staying calm and thinking through problems like, okay, hey, this is happening. What do I need to do to stay alive? And, so dealing with something like hypothermia, sure, it can cost you your life, but it's not something that you necessarily has to. You can work through it. So like all these things, it's like, I like things that are going to push you to work through these things that could be fatal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big reason, I guess, why I do it. Is just, it's a mental game. And I like being able to overcome, those challenges and try to work through it. I'm a problem solver. And that's really what you're doing when you're out there and you're pushing yourself, is you're solving problems. You're not trying to burn too many matches too soon, but you're also trying to, monitor your own body's physiology with the output of your effort. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So hats off to you, man. I hope you meet your goals moving forward, and we'll try to keep in touch so we can keep each other motivated, because I'm thinking about myself stepping up my game and getting back into signing up for a race. I'm getting a little bit more interested in doing that. So I'll be probably putting in a little bit more miles and doing my thing. But yeah, we'll have to keep each other honest.
I appreciate you helping fuel that fire and helping pushing me to that, to achieve more. Like I like to be around people that are going to push me and challenge me to do better. And, like you help me do that. So
yeah,
I like to have friendships that are going to encourage and push you to that next level.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that you put yourself around other people that are going to motivate you. It's one of the reasons why I continually, I go on and I look at my old Instagram from my running days, and I get inspired by the people that I followed there and seeing what they're doing. And I see, oh, wow, they're signing up for another race, or they just crushed that race. And that's kind of what helps to motivate, is being around other people that are inspirational. And so, yeah, that's a huge driver for, a lot of people's success, is putting themselves around other people that are going to bring out the best in them. So, yeah, I'm glad to know that, dude. Thanks. Let me ask you, are you going to be making any more public appearances this year? I know you've been to a few festivals and trade shows and stuff, but are you going to be out at any other events?
There, so far, I think, I go to Jack's every fall. I typically go to Off Grid with Doug and Stacy's fall event, but I think that's up in the air right now. And I don't have any other commitments so far. I'm trying to get set up here. I'm trying to get my shop built, house done, fencing, all that kind of stuff. And I hope to do events here on my property in the future. So,
yeah, cool. Do you have any new knife designs coming out, or any new projects or anything you're working on with MT Knives?
Yeah, I just got in another batch of Genesis that I'm working on, and then I'm working on another production knife, and I'm working on the next run of limited edition knives. So I'm waiting on some things for that. But
right. Yeah, man, I've appreciated having you on, getting a chance to chop it up, and wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any final thoughts or any words of encouragement that you'd like to leave folks with.
I'd just say, surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you and push you, and that you can learn from. Knowledge is very valuable, and we don't know what kind of challenges we're going to face in the future, but I can tell you this much: the more knowledge and information that you have, I really appreciate your channel, the stuff that you share about growing food, biochar, all that kind of stuff. I know a lot, but I don't know it all, and anybody that you can learn from and learn useful information, how to grow food, how to take care of yourself, I think it's going to pay dividends.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, thanks for the kind words. I certainly don't feel as though that I have all the answers. I mean, I've got a few little things that I'm doing around here, and I like to be able to share that information, because I do think that it's important that we don't just hold on to what it is that we know, but we share that with other people, because it just makes everybody within a community stronger. And that's one of the reasons why I do it. That's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to to do this channel is just to put that information out there, because we are all learning. We are all, learning as we go through life. And again, I'm the first one to admit I don't have all the answers, but what little I do have, I don't mind sharing. So I appreciate the kind words again. But I think we'll wrap it up tonight. And for all of those that were in the live stream, or all that will listen after this on the rebroadcast, thanks for joining us. And remember that we have a farm store at porterhouseandteal.com, where you can go and get your comfrey needs met. And we will be adding a few more items here shortly. Rebecca's got some new soaps that are coming out and some other items that we'll be putting up. And you can catch the rebroadcast of this live on Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google. And if you do decide to go over there and listen to it there, you won't hear any ads, but you will hear ads on the rebroadcast of this, because I will be turning monetization on after this live stream. So thanks again, guys. And remember to go out and try to be better tomorrow than you were today, and that homesteading is not harmful content. So thanks again, Patrick.
Thank you.